conversation has started about nuclear weapons being deployed in no other place than Poland. Poland to get nukes. Why? Why would Poland want nukes? Well, it is in the response of the deployment of nuclear weaponry in our neighboring country, our little neighbor called Belarus or Białoruś, as it used to be called, Ruś Biała, the puppet state that is basically run by Russia, the puppet state that Russia might be moving increasingly aggressively to directly incorporate into Russia itself, with its leader Lukashenko, the person that actually likes the situation in which the war goes on for as long as possible. The person who, for all intents and purposes, is actually not even the rightful president, not actually the rightful leader of the country. Because as we all know, in the recent election in Belarus, the woman of the candidate that was arrested should have won. There was a huge frequency of people that went to vote for her, and the election was blatantly rigged, and there was a nationwide protest, which unfortunately, due to a support from Russia, fell. It led to no substantive change in the regime. Lukashenko went on to rule its country with a tight fist, business as usual. And of course, recently Belarus also has enacted a law which allows the military, without any legal repercussions, to shoot civilians. Of course, this has been happening before, the military shooting towards civilians and not facing any repercussion, but now this sort of thing has been enshrined into law. So we all know about Belarus, we all know what kind of country it is, we all know what kind of system of governance it adopts. We also know that was the fate that Russia had in store for Ukraine. So if we want to know what sort of country Ukraine would have become if Russia had its way, we can just look at Belarus and directly observe. So, in a gesture of fist, sort of chest thumping, chests hitting, Russia is bringing nuclear weapons to Belarus. And Lukashenko has been saying, boasting how he would be in control of these nuclear weapons, which, of course, very quickly he was brought down a notch and reminded, no, you will actually not be in charge of anything. Russia is still firmly in charge of these nuclear weapons. And it is sort of meant to be a deterrent, a sort of frightener for the West, for countries that support Ukraine. And in response, there has been talk of nuclear warheads being placed in Poland as a response to this move, to this placing of nuclear weapons in Belarus. Poland's president as well as prime minister have expressed the readiness of Poland to receive nuclear missiles. And of course, there has been a response from the Kremlin, a response of, if you do this, there will be consequences. That is basically what the Kremlin has said in response to this whole thing. If Poland gets nukes, if there are nukes in Poland, there will be serious consequences, which it sort of remains to be, guessed what those serious consequences would supposedly be. And with that little intro, with that little introduction to the topic, we're gonna once again be reading an article. Poland is not a nuclear power now. We will be reading an article. The only country in the European Union that is a nuclear power is France, as far as I'm aware. Poland definitely is not one. Let's read the article. I love reading. You love listening to me read. You love my cute little accent. So, without further ado, maybe we'll look at more than one article even. We'll see. It's the sky is the limit. We'll just have to see. We'll just have to see where this whole thing takes us. Economic Times. The Economic Times, that's the thing that we're gonna be reading right now. Poland's leader says his country is ready to host NATO members' nuclear weapons to counter Russia. Synopsis: Poland's President Andrzej Duda, which we'll be talking a bit more about Polish President Andrzej Duda, because there are interesting stories, interesting things about our president, but that's a topic for a different segment. That's a story for a different segment. Poland's President Andrzej Duda stated that Poland would be prepared to host nuclear weapons from NATO allies in response to Russia's reported relocation of nuclear weapons to Belarus. This move aligns with Poland's commitment to NATO security on its eastern flank. Prime Minister Donald Tusk, sharing Duda's stance, expressed the need for urgent discussions on the matter. Meanwhile, the Kremlin warned of necessary steps to ensure Russia's security if US nuclear weapons were deployed in Poland. Poland's support for Ukraine in the face of Russia's invasion remains steadfast, which we are seeing already a very worrying trend, I will say, because in my opinion, we should be, at the end of the day, we should be striving for a world with less nuclear weapons. We should be striving ideally for a world in which less countries host nuclear weapons, less countries have nuclear weapons. Right? That was the whole point of the Budapest Memorandum as well. That sort of made Ukraine give up its third largest nuclear arsenal at the time. That is the whole point. Because of the whole mutual assured destruction, to move away from nuclear weapons, move away from this sort of thing. And now it seems like the most logical thing is for countries to have nukes, which is a very worrying thing. Because the more countries have nukes, the more the probability goes up that something might just go wrong, that a mistake be made, that something might just, yeah, there's just more possibilities for a screw up. It's unfortunate, but it's also reality. Yeah, I agree. Nomadic. Belarus is just Russia's dog, and Putin is the biggest enemy of stability in Russia and the world while we're at it. So we don't want a situation in which countries are racing to develop nuclear potential. We don't want a world in which more and more countries will host nuclear weapons. That is not what we want. I assure you that it is not. Poland's president says the NATO members would be ready to host the nuclear weapons of the military alliance's other members in response to Russia's moving its nuclear weapons to neighboring Belarus. President Andrzej Duda made the comments in an interview published Monday in the Fact tabloid. Russia is recently relocating its nuclear weapons to Belarus, Duda said in a reference to Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko's announcement in December. If there were a decision by our allies to deploy nuclear weapons within the nuclear sharing also on our territory in order to strengthen the security of NATO's eastern flank, we are ready, Duda said. He said Poland is aware of its obligations within the 32-member alliance that includes the United States. Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who shares Duda's views on national security, later told journalists that he needs to discuss this suggestion with him urgently. Duda has previously spoken of Poland's openness to nuclear sharing within NATO. Under NATO nuclear weapons sharing, the US has provided nuclear weapons to Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey to deploy and store. In Moscow, a Kremlin spokesman said any deployment of US nuclear weapons in Poland would be met with steps necessary for Russia's security. Of course, it is left to our imagination just what that would mean. What? Would Russia just deploy more nukes in Belarus? What exactly does that mean? There's no way to say. It is very curious, this double standard that Russia insists on deploying. This double standard of we will deploy nuclear weapons in Belarus directly next to Poland. Oh, but if Poland dares to store nuclear weapons, now that's bad for security. No, 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 no. It takes two to tango. If you care about being secure, if you care about your security, I mean that, and in this case, it means not wanting Poland to store nuclear arsenal. Then I'm sorry, there needs to be some reciprocation. In this case, Russia should not be deploying nuclear arsenal in Belarus. But in reality, as is the case with Ukraine, Russia doesn't care. Russia doesn't care how much it escalates. It only posits that anything that is done in its proximity is a danger to its security. But in reality, Russia does not care to keep the same standard themselves, which creates a problem. Because in reality, the discussion about deployment of nuclear weapons in Poland is not a move initiated by NATO or Poland. No, it is a response to nuclear weapons being moved to Belarus. So it is a thing that Russia has directly initiated. So there, in reality, one could very easily make the point that the provocation here is done by Russia, none other. So there you go. Necessary would be met with steps necessary for Russia's security. The military will, of course, analyze the situation and if such plans are implemented, and in any case will do everything necessary, will take all the necessary retaliatory steps to guarantee our safety, Dmitry Peskov said during a daily news conference. Poland is a staunch supporter of neighboring Ukraine as it fends off Russia's full-scale invasion now in its third year. So basically, what is happening here is that, and that has been the case since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, Russia has of course not been happy with the fact that about Poland's support of Ukraine. Russia has been spreading propaganda from the very beginning of the war that Poland would be moving in any time now to annex western parts of Ukraine. And it is not really surprising in the slightest that Russia would not be happy that Poland is not impressed with its nuclear posturing, and that discussion would start about placing nuclear warheads in Poland. Russia is not happy about this at all. And it's already sort of trying to threaten with consequences. Or what exactly are those consequences supposed to be? What will Russia do? Use a tactical nuclear strike on Poland? Well, considering Russia's situation, considering that Russia is not overwhelmingly overcoming Ukraine, believe it or not, that might be a fatal mistake on its own. Because technically speaking, that would of course trigger Article 5, which would mean that Russia would not be just at war with Ukraine anymore. It would be at war with Poland as well as the entirety of NATO. So, what exactly are the steps that Russia would take? What are all the necessary retaliatory steps to guarantee Russia's safety? What could Russia do more than what it's already doing, placing nuclear weapons in Belarus? What more could it possibly do? What, is Russia going to invade Poland directly? And the current situation in Ukraine? I personally would call that unwise as well, and I doubt Russia would do that. So the question remains, what would the retaliatory action be? What could we even expect? That is the question that I posit to you. That is the question that I posit to the chat. And that is the question that I posit, I suppose, to the thousands upon thousands of VOD watchers. Leave a comment. Leave a comment below what you think the big Russian retaliatory action will be.